What is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am your host. And joining me, as always, my guy Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well. I just got clearance to be here on Thursday during the first round. Probably would have shown up anyway. I just would have lost some points in class. So happy to not be missing any points in class. Steven, how are you?
I'm doing great. I remember when I had to, schedule my classes around the podcast live stream for the draft. So it is what it is. We gotta do what we gotta do and jump through the hoops when we're trying to work in education. So it's just part of the business. So I'm excited to dive into our final positional rankings video tonight. It's been a long grind this year, although I will say I think I've officially decided that it's better to start the draft process in February than it is in November because like there still is it's a lot of like stress catching up to everybody, but at the same time, like you have your own views. Like I think you don't get like as done with the process at this time. Like at this time last year, I was just kind of like, ugh, okay, like let's get to the draft. I'm still like pretty excited about like watching film. So regardless, excited to jump into our offensive tackle rankings today, which are our final episode rankings or positional rankings, excuse me, of the 2023 class.
Yeah, I can't believe we're here. New plan for next year. We make the playoffs, we win the Super Bowl, and then we start watching film. I think that's a fair compromise for everyone. We just, Chargers win the Super Bowl every year. We start in February, totally fine. I can work with that.
Yeah, I mean, if they win the Super Bowl, we would be starting probably like in March. So it would really be like just getting like top fives into this group. So, it is what it is. I know, in all seriousness, I love the draft, man. I love all of the discussions. I've really tried to go out of my way this year and like follow new people who like are also into the draft. And so just getting a bunch of new ideas and, able to kind of discuss some things with people that I don't see. Like, we've talked a little bit back and forth on Twitter about Kendre Miller, and he was somebody I was initially like slower on. And then, obviously Arjun's, graphics certainly help, but then just kind of talking about people or talking about him with other people, it's something like that kind of, helps you kind of see a prospect more clearly. So lots of exciting stuff ahead in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. I don't even watch college film, like actual college football when it's live. Yeah. So I organically found out who Marvin Harrison Jr. is by just like I didn't know I knew his name. Yeah. But I didn't know what number he was. Then I started watching DBs and I'm like, that number 18 is pretty good. Like,
he's pretty good.
He's pretty good. So I'm like, oh, that's who he is. So it is kind of fun to organically go through this and be like, oh, that's who it is. But also like circle back because someone like Lucas Van Ness, I wasn't super high on it. I'm not like saying he's a top 2 edge for me, like some people have him, but like watching him again, but in the context of having watched him and then watching some of the offensive tackles or guards or whatever, you kind of like change your grade because now you know who these guys are. I didn't know who Paris Johnson Jr. was before this process. I knew the right for Ohio State was a big old dude, but that's kind of it. That's all I had. So going back, you can kind of like adjust some of your grades based on the competition that they face and have some appreciation for guys that we graded earlier in the cycle that we didn't know about or I didn't know about.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is my public petition to make college football film available on some kind of platform to everybody. I will pay for it, even like if it's an NIL foundation thing for your players. Like it's so annoying. Like I was really excited this week to watch, some more Nick Saldiveri tape, and they played Appalachian State, and I was like, okay, I can watch another good game for Saldiveri against a nice quality edge rusher and Nick Hampton. Get some more Zach Kuntz film as well, and just kind of fill in the gaps a little bit there. And Nick Hampton didn't play, and Zach Kuntz didn't play, and I'm like, I watched like 15 plays, and I'm like, wait, where's Hampton at? Where's Kuntz at? And neither of them played, and I was just like, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
And so I had to get film from a friend, and who got it from a friend. So it just is like college film should be available to everybody who wants it. I think that would make things a lot better. Draft Twitter would go crazy. Everybody like me and you would pay for it. So this is my public plea for teams to make your college coaches tape available to the public somehow.
Yeah, thankfully we have friends of friends, and worst case scenario we do have caddies, and worst case scenario you're scraping through YouTube as best you can for some random, like I remember trying to watch Quinn Miners, and I'm like, fine Quinn Miners film.
Yeah.
You're just trying your best to work with that. But hey, anybody out there who wants to make some money in the business, just do exactly what Caddy's Cutups does, but like just prioritize like linemen or something.
Yeah.
And like, or just be a little bit faster. And I will pay double. I will pay triple. I will pay a good $100, $200, $300 for a better database, or just have everything available. Like I'll pay serious money to have things all available for me, because it's just that much more helpful. I know it's not for everyone. I know some people don't have the time or even the finances or whatever to watch all 22, but just it's such a wonderful resource, and it changes the way you see the game. Honestly, even for someone like me who doesn't really know anything, it's still like I'm at least going to try my best to do my homework.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you saw Brett Coleman and EJ Snyder get flagged like all the time these days because they put like all 22 footage up. And it's always these SEC schools, man. I'm like SEC schools, like let people talk about your players. Like, come on. It's ridiculous. So that's our little rant about college tape. So we do have a bit of news to get to before we dive into our offensive tackle rankings. That is, of course, the return of Jalen Guyton, which is something we kind of talked about early on in the process in terms of free agency, and then we weren't super sure if he would ultimately come back and be healthy this season. So he is back. He has re-signed with the team, wearing number 15 this year. So he booted Cameron Dicker out of his number. So poor Cameron Dicker, this will be his fifth number in the NFL in 2 years. He'll be wearing number 11. But Tyler, your thoughts here as we maybe kind of relate this to the draft and how this could possibly impact draft weekend for the Chargers and Mr. Jalen Guyton coming back.
Yeah, this Jalen Guyton thing is fascinating to me because, well, one, good for him. Welcome back. I understand why they'd have him back, and I'm all for it. But, in January after the Jaguars game, let's say there was a conversation with a certain quarterback, and, he said that he missed Jalen Guyton and knew that the offense just needed him, or really any vertical, speed threat and presence out there. So teams would stop being able to play the run, play the short game, that sort of thing, especially in an offense that has prioritized the short game. And then later we see Austin Eckler say, I think a month or so later, go on live TV and say, hey, we missed Jalen Guyton because we didn't have that speed threat out there. So, and now he's back. And to me, like, you have two prominent offensive players saying that they missed Jalen Guyton, and now Jalen Guyton is back. And I think that Chargers fans really need to, and this might play into the draft process, we'll see in a week. Justin Herbert really likes Jalen Guyton, and Justin Herbert is going to, I don't want to say get his way, but Jalen Guyton is back. And I think that Justin Herbert really, and his trust in him does play a really big part in that. I mean, the longest completion of Justin Herbert's career is 72 yards, and that's to Jalen Guyton against the Bucs. The best throw, maybe you think I would agree and argue that's the best one we've ever seen from Justin Herbert is to Jalen Guyton, where he split, too high or whatever against the Giants, which is something Justin Herbert has struggled against. What did Jesse Bates just make, like $60 million or whatever it is? Herbert just threw it up to him, threw it up to Jalen Guyton to go out and moss Jesse Bates in the end zone. Herbert does, like, his, I get his interceptions are up, but his turnover worthy play rate is best in the league practically the last 2.5 years or so, 3 years really overall, better than anybody else in the league. And he just threw a jump ball to Jalen Guyton against Jesse Bates. Like, that's how much he trusts Jalen Guyton. And Jalen Guyton had more fourth down targets and conversions than Mike Williams for all of 2021 until the final game where Mike Williams had 32 of them or whatever. But for the most part, like, Jalen Guyton has a lot of trust built from in a relationship with him and Justin Herbert that, I don't know if a guy that comes out in the draft is going to have. So overall, I don't think that his return changes anything about the Chargers draft strategy the first, I would say, at least 2 rounds. But I also don't think that means that they were or weren't, like, they were going to take a receiver, now they won't. Like, I don't know, man. To me, like, I'm looking at the way the roster is constructed and what they've been doing, and it really just seems to me like they're going to maintain continuity as much as possible. The only ones that left were Matt Filer because they had to cut him. But the only change there is you're just taking a starter you already had, who was a starter for you last year, and just inserting him at left guard. So there really is still continuity there. The defense, there's so much overturn, whether it's Tranquil, Van Noy so far, Callahan so far, Adderley retired, Fajoko. We'll see about Gilman and Woods, what happens there, whether they're a starter or not. But there's so much turnover there. But on offense, they've tried to maintain so much continuity to the point where like Easton Stick is back and Will Clapp is back.
Yeah.
And now Donald Parham, Trey Pipkins, and now Jalen Guyton is back. So, I don't think it changes anything for the Chargers' plans early in the draft, nor should it. But I also really think that doesn't mean that their plan was to ever draft a receiver in the first 2 rounds to begin with. Like, I really think, and the Chargers fans hate this, but I had the same conversation last year. I really think that they think they're set for the most part, and they're going to wait to address wide receiver at best in round 2 of this upcoming draft. But I really feel like it's going to be a 3rd round, high RAS project sort of guy, classic Tom Telesco thing, maybe someone day 3. And that's kind of it. And if this sounds familiar, when they signed DeAndre Carter last year, I remember having the conversation when on the video that I made that, like, do I agree with it? No, we were drafting receivers over and over and over again at different points in the draft last year in our mocks. But I said, like, if you look at Carter's role in Washington and you kind of believe in Jalen Guyton, I feel like the Chargers aren't going to take a receiver early. They didn't, and they flat out didn't take one at all. At all. Yeah. So, no one's going to want to hear that. But I don't know, man. Jalen Guyton doesn't change the draft plans in the first 2 or 3, the first, 2, I think 3 rounds. But I also don't think that they are going to take a receiver very early either.
Yeah, I think worst case scenario for Jalen Guyton, in my opinion, is that he's wide receiver 5. I think we'll see about his health. Usually somebody who is coming off an ACL injury has, some issues in his first season back. So, this is dependent on how his health goes, but he tore his ACL in September. So he's got a lot of time to recover until, game 1, so to speak. So I don't think he changes the first 3 rounds. I still think that they're going to take a receiver in the first 3 rounds at some point. Frankly, like, they need the long-term flexibility. Mm-hmm. You just don't know with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams who's going to be on the roster at this time next year. So I still think that they need to take one early, but I think this gives them the flexibility in the same way that bringing back Will Clapp does, on day 3. Will Clapp can play center. He can play guard. It doesn't necessarily pencil you into taking a pure center or missing out on a pure center if that's like what your plan is. And same thing with Jalen Guyton. If you play the board on day 3 and there's just not a receiver that you really love to come away with, then Jalen Guyton's your wide receiver 5. And you probably feel pretty good about it. And you can find a return man specialist as an undrafted free agent, or maybe you kind of do that as a post draft signing. So I don't think this really, like you said, I don't think this changes much on the first 2 days, but I think it gives them some flexibility, some insurance on day 3 if they don't feel like they absolutely love one of these receivers, late in the class.
Yeah, and I don't buy. Now we'll see with the injury. That's the only thing that's the clear, obvious question mark here. But I really don't think, if we're talking like Trey Palmer territory or Andre Yosevich territory, Bryce Ford Wheaton territory or something like that, like, I don't think any of those guys are beating out Jalen Guyton in camp. Not with the chemistry that he has. Agreed. Not like, and also we've seen Jalen Guyton play football and get better. And it was just Joe Lombardi going, nah, or whoever it was, saying like, nah, we're not going to play him. Like, the speed threat we need, we're not going to play him for the first, 3.5 games of last year. And of course, he finally plays in a game and he does a great pass. And look, he throws deep at 40 yards. It was great. Top 10 weird. Herbert throw. There it is. And then he gets hurt. So unfortunate, but I don't know. I'm really curious who they think could beat out Jalen Guyton, because yes, like, in theory, you could find some guys that maybe could, but I don't know that somebody is, given his history and chemistry with Justin Herbert.
Yeah, that trust is huge. And, you've talked about, several plays, but his first touchdown pass was to Jalen Guyton. So, there's just a ton of trust between those two, going back to, his rookie training camp where Jalen Guyton was like his go-to guy because Anthony Lynn refused to give him starter reps. So, look at that coming for full circle here. So I still think that they take a receiver on day 2. I think that's the best approach here. add some versatility in that room. We'll see ultimately kind of how this wide receiver board pans out. There's a lot of smoke that the NFL as a whole is not super high on this wide receiver class. And so, that probably indicates that that's the Chargers too, right? And we've talked about this. Like, I think me and you both really like Zay Flowers. Would be very happy with Zay Flowers in the first round. I think Jordan Addison kind of to a lesser extent, but we get it. But they're physical outliers, and this isn't a great class. So I just have a hard time thinking that the Chargers are going to prioritize wide receiver in the first round. I still think that they could prioritize that on day 2. There's again James Palmer today from NFL Network kind of stoking the fires of the Chargers potentially trading down. And listen, man, if they can trade down, like that's an ideal situation, as we have continued to talk about. So I still see them taking a receiver on day 2. Like that to me is like the most likely receiver outcome. Get somebody who can offer you some verticality threat, as well as potentially, giving you some yak ability. Like I still think Marvin Mims would be a fantastic pick. We really like Jonathan Mingo as well. So the Chargers, like I know everybody wants them to take a receiver in round one. If this were a better class, I'd be all about it, but it's not. Analysts have said that from the beginning, and now the NFL is starting to come out and say themselves too, like, Quentin Johnston is wide receiver 2 consensus apparently in the league, according to Tony Pauline. Like that's a rough thing for the league to come out and say, with sources and everything like that. So, Quentin Johnston being wide receiver 2, I think in most years he's probably like wide receiver 5, 6 consensus. So it's just not a great class. And I think fans have really overvalued this specific class. And, we'll get to our big board on our next episode, but fans have really been all about receiver, when really it's just like, I've never felt like that's a strong possibility unless like everybody else is gone. Like if they trade back and all the tight ends, all the edge rushers, all the corners that they like are all gone, then sure, take a wide receiver. But I don't think the Chargers are going to prioritize wide receiver in round 1. And signing Jalen Guyton doesn't necessarily change that. Like I said, to me, that's more about like day 3 flexibility.
Yeah, definitely want to specify there in case someone takes our word and clips it out or whatever. Like, we're not saying Jalen Guyton means they don't draft a receiver in round 1. I mean, they might think that. I don't know. But like they might not do it. But I don't think it's anything to do with Jalen Guyton. What would you think then they're looking for round 2, round 3, whatever is the rest of the draft to kind of complement this room, or they are complementing the room at all? Is it going to be someone smaller and twitchier? Is it going to be a yak guy? Are they going to find their Cedric Tillman, their Bryce Ford Wheaton on day 3? Like, are they going for their bigger body guy that they're used to? Are they just going to go with best receiver available? Like, what do you think that they look for? Because Jalen Guyton is now, at minimum, an answer to some speed in the room. So do they go get another guy who's like Jalen Guyton and runs fast? Or do you think they kind of pivot and find a different body type?
I still think that it might not be like a vertical specialist, so to speak, but if Jalen Hyatt is there at 54, you could have Jalen and Jalen, which I think would be funny because Jalen Hyatt's kind of like a souped up version of Jalen Guyton. So I don't think it's necessarily like a prerequisite that it's one or the other. I do think that they need some kind of like athletic dimension, whether that's a yards after catch guy, whether that's a vertical player. They do need more speed, and I think Kellen Moore and Tom Telesco certainly have a type, but I just feel like going out and getting Cedric Tillman or somebody like that is just too redundant for 2023. Like in a vacuum, I can understand why you would want Tillman to potentially be your future X, but in 2023 with him and Mike Williams, I just feel like that's a little too redundant right now.
Yeah, I think so. I think when it comes time to my guess, honestly, their starting 3 is set. I think that's their starting 3. Unless for some reason Jackson Smith and Nugba falls. I think they play it out this year with Guyton and a draft pick or someone they sign. And I think next year, if they do pivot away from Mike Williams or Keenan Allen, I think they just take the receiver in round 1 that replaces whoever is let go because of their contract. That's how I think Tom Telesco does it. And I think that's kind of based on how he's always done it. Like whoever the big, whatever it is that leaves, there's a draft pick really early on that replaces them. Yeah. It's always been like that for him. And I think that's what happens next year.
Yeah, I think that the need for like a future wide receiver 1 is a bit overstated right now. Because like I said, this class is not stocked full with those guys. Like I think if Jackson Smith and Jigba were the only guy like in the next 3-4 years to have like multiple 1,000-yard seasons, I would not be surprised. This is just not that kind of class. So you take a complementary piece that can complement your current core and your future core, and then next year, like you're saying, first round wide receiver, second round wide receiver. It's like we don't know for sure, but it sounds like next year's wide receiver class is better. It certainly has Marvin Harrison Jr. in it, who will not be available to the Chargers, unfortunately,
No.
barring like a truly disastrous season. That man's going to be a top 3 pick next year, but there are some other receivers that I think could certainly pop up, and this wide receiver class is really an outlier. Like this is the worst receiver class in terms of top end talent that we've seen in probably like 5-6 years. So I would assume next year we get back to like normal, like 3-4 legitimate top 15 pick kind of class.
Yeah, I would imagine. I can't imagine it's like wide receiver doesn't feel like a position that would be trending downward for, NFL pipeline and stuff. So, yeah, I think they'll get back to quote unquote, their form. Of course, Marvin Harrison Jr. will help fix that. I know who he is now. And so I can't wait to figure out who all these receivers are in February of next year.
Yeah, man. There's Antonio Gates Jr. too at Michigan State. So,
jeez, I'm so old. What is happening?
Oh, also speaking of Chargers legends, sons, or whatever, Dane Brugler was listening to his podcast. Apparently, Travius Hodges Tomlinson just wants to go by Trey Tomlinson now. So no more Vias and no more Hodges. It's just Trey Tomlinson, which I think is a good thing for him.
Okay. I really have a conspiracy in my brain that the Chargers are going to take Tomlinson, and that's just going to be all over. Like, you can sell the shit out of that. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Especially if he just goes by Tomlinson. You can buy a new Tomlinson jersey and he plays DB. Like, come on. You can sell that. And he is a fun player. I think it's a kind of a round 4-ish thing given the size, but like he's pretty talented. And it'd be a lot of fun. I have a sort of mini conspiracy in my head that like the Chargers will make that happen.
I mean, he's a good player, man. I would be very concerned about the lack of size at cornerback if that were the case with him and Asante Samuel Jr. But yeah, in a vacuum, he's a good player. So, all right. So we've been talking for 23 minutes already. So we'll jump right into our offensive tackle rankings. Tyler, if you want to share that sheet, we'll get started there. And then we'll get started. So we're back to normal top 8 and a just missed. This offensive tackle class, I think, has some really quality talent at the top, and then unfortunately really falls off later on. So excited to see how this one goes.
Yeah, I didn't dislike this class by any means. I'm in love with one of the players on here, at least. Like,
yeah,
I'm going to switch him out, and he'll be my best man at my wedding. But
can you? Sorry, Tyler. Can you zoom in on that?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, let me see if I can wait. Here we go. That's the school's going to be the toughest one to fit there. So let's go 125. Okay. You'd think after the 19th time we've done this that I would know that, but
it's all good. All right. So I'll start with this one. I'll start with my just missed player here. Let me make sure I have this right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. My just missed is going to be Mr. Wanya Morris from Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. So both Oklahoma tackles make my top list. I did not get to a ton of other ones that really would challenge this. So like I said, the drop-off was pretty steep for me. So I don't necessarily love Wanya Morris. Jalen Duncan from Maryland is my 10th, and like I'm just like not a huge fan of his, but like that's where the class is at. So Wanya Morris, I think, is your like kind of consolation prize if you miss out on who I think we're both going to have in the top 3, Mr. Darnell Wright, in terms of like pure right tackle, very heavy-handed kind of player. I do think Darnell Wright is much more athletic, but Wanya Morris has one of the more violent natures to his game. Really great size. His range is a little bit concerning, which is why I have him this low. But if you want some violence, some nastiness in terms of your backup offensive tackle, I think Wanya Morris is a quality player to take that chance on.
That's beautiful. I didn't get to watching him, but that's so much the Oklahoma way that I've
Yeah.
started to notice. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. And then Brandon Thorne the other day mentioned that that was like what they do. They emphasize finishing blocks. And if it's, Braden Willis, the tight end, this class, Marquise Hayes from last year's class at guard, like these guys are awesome. And of course, there's another Oklahoma tackle on here as well. I didn't watch him, but I should, I think. It seems like you'd like him. Jalen Duncan is also my 10th. So he didn't make my list. I only graded 10, so sort of process of elimination. Let me get this name right. S-A. Okay, I can make this work.
Yeah.
Nick Saldiveri.
There you go.
From Old Dominion. I'm going to teach one day, and I'm sitting here like S-A-L-D.
M-I-S-S-I-S-S-S.
Yeah. Currently unemployed. So Nick Saldiveri from Old Dominion.
Hire my guy.
Please. Whatever. Never mind. I can't see the other thing. Saldiveri is a 3-year starter at Old Dominion. Most of his snaps at right tackle, of course. I got to him sort of late. One game basically at right guard, and I think like one game at left tackle that I didn't watch. Yeah. But he does I do really like him more than I think this 9th place start here. I just don't know. I'm trying to prioritize some ceilings over others. But Saldiveri is really, really solid. I think his recovery is excellent. I sent you a rep, right? Like he was able to extend his leg like a gymnast and jump 3 feet the other direction to try to recover. Like that was really, really impressive from him. One of the higher IQ guys, like right from the jump, I could tell like this is a high IQ guy in terms of, blitzes, stunts, whatever, helping his other guys out. This didn't most of this class didn't feel like they had a ton of guys that were really good at helping their other guys out. But Saldiveri could really, really so much do that. The biggest concern that I saw through the games that I watched was he tended to let the guys get his hands into his chest first, whether he was late or because of wide hands. And I feel like it was impressive because even when I was watching Appalachian State, like he was able to anchor down and hold them. But then some other people from maybe bigger, better programs were able to, get his hands into his chest and beat him out, leverage him, outpower him, outwork him, that sort of thing. So some of those power rushes were kind of nasty on him. So I would have liked to have seen after 3 years as a starter that was worked through. But still, I think he's a heck of a player. I watched his game against Virginia at guard, and I thought he looked really solid there. I'm not saying he's like a Zion Johnson, but I could tell you could flip him to guard, and he was pretty aware of what he was doing. And even within that game, he would go tackle, guard, tackle, guard. I don't know why. I don't know what the deal was with that game, but it was kind of like Max Mitchell's game from last year where he would just have to flip around different parts of the line mid-game sometimes. So solid guy, solid athlete, good traits. I could definitely see him as a Chargers target. The correct response is that it's probably round 4. The Telesco response is that it's probably round 3.
Right. Yeah. If the Chargers want him, they're gonna have to take him in round 3. So I watched him earlier this week. I watched him after hearing that Brandon Thorne had him as a top 65 player. I think it was, might have been top 70.
Oh, wow.
So Brandon Thorne really, really likes him. He's also kind of down on the tackle class, and I think in a normal class, he probably doesn't make the top 10, right? I think there's just not great depth at this position. So Saldiveri, I think, is, like you mentioned, you highlighted his kind of strengths there. Incredibly smart player, just really sound and calm and collected when he's playing. Whatever kind of stunt or slot blitz or delayed blitz that other teams were throwing at him, he always seemed to have an answer for it. Always had his head on a swivel, always had the right technique to pick those kind of things up. And I think that does matter. It offers you, a really nice floor that he's going to be able to handle different kind of schemes, different kind of blitzes, different kind of stunts in games. That he's going to be, a high IQ kind of player for you. You mentioned just his kind of tendency to have rushers get into his chest. That's definitely something that I noticed more against Coastal Carolina than I did against Appalachian State. So technique is a bit up and down. I think for me, it really all comes down to his get off and his technique, because he tested at a very high level in terms of his 10-yard split, in terms of his short shuttle, 3-cone. So the athleticism is there. And this is something that Trey Pipkins has also kind of struggled with. And he mentioned in his article in the fall with Daniel Popper, is that he needed somebody to be able to help him unlock that athleticism because he was almost used to, when you're in college and you're playing offensive tackle, you're his size, 6'6", 320 at Old Dominion. Like, you don't necessarily have to be like super refined in your technique and your get off and things like that. But who's he training with? Mr. Duke Manyweather. So, like you mentioned, he checks a lot of boxes for the Chargers in terms of like a future, right tackle, swing tackle type. I wish he had been a little bit more versatile at college. We've seen a bunch of these other guys kind of move around more often. Brandon Daniels at Utah. I don't have him as a tackle, but we've seen him move around more often. Cody Mock, who I have later on here, like he moved around at the Senior Bowl at least. Saldivary's kind of stuck to right tackle, and I think he can have a lot of value, right? But I wish there were just a little bit more flexibility there, and maybe that's something he can work on for sure. But in terms of this class, like I have him right at the cutoff as a 3rd round grade. He's at a 6 out of 8 for me, which is that cutoff. So I think he's a quality developmental option. And like I said, if you can really help him unlock that explosiveness, I think you can get a quality player down the road.
Yeah, I would agree. From the Wynn family, it's hard to trust or not trust Pipkins because he's hasn't played a ton, but then he did play that full year, but he wasn't able to play through it. But yeah, I agree. Like someone like this, couple guys on this list, and some guys I'll probably watch later on. We'll see. But I would love for them to get a depth option, and why not? The Chargers have, shown what happens when Pipkins is not on the field, and I think that it's very clear that they do need some backup options. So I'll be happy with Saldivari there.
Yeah.
And what you mentioned, go for it.
To Thomas Martinez's point, arm length is 33.25 according to the RAS website.
Yeah, I think only one of the tackles I have ranked has under 33, and that is it Berger? No.
I think Bergeron's at 33. Steen's under 33, yeah.
That's who it is. Yeah.
So I actually have Steen as a guard, so good transition there. So he did not make my list. I would, if I kept him at tackle, I think that would move Wanya Morris down, but I do think Tyler Steen kind of has some stereotypical
that's a good one
guard traits.
That's a good one. Yeah. So I have Steen at number 8, but I totally get it. I totally get the guard part there too. Because I don't know what it is about Alabama players. I might as well just put him on my number 8, but they have like this look to them. I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? I don't want to like say like it's not an offensive thing. It's not like he's like big, fat or anything, but like I don't know, man. They got like this thick build to them, and they move a certain way. He looks like, think of the last 5 Alabama tackles, and he looks like that. But he also I could totally see the guard.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you there. I think I'm making sure here. So Tyler Steen actually started his career at Alabama or at Vanderbilt as a defensive end, and then moved to right tackle, and then played left tackle for Alabama. So you want to talk about some versatility? I think he has that, and I think I like it because to me the concern with Tyler Steen is just like his range, just his ability to get to the second level. But I think in this class, like if you're floor is a quality guard prospect, like I think you can make that transition. So that to me is like Duke Manyweather always talks about this. It's like arm length has kind of become like, like if it's under 33, you have to transition to guard. For me, it's like, what kind of range do you have? Like what kind of explosiveness off the ball do you have? And can you execute these reach blocks and these backside cutoffs? And can you get to the second level? And if you can, like, I think you can learn how to manage the shorter arms. So that is why I kept Cody Mock as an offensive tackle. And that's why I switched Tyler Steen to guard, because I just don't think that Steen has that kind of range.
Yeah, I had Cody Mock as a guard because that's kind of, one, I didn't watch a lot of guards, so I had to make a list. But thinking about it more, like he should have definitely stayed at tackle for me. So he would have been like, I don't know, 7th or 6th for me.
Yeah, so he is number 7 for me. I'm just gonna put
to your point about arm length as well. Jamari Sawyer's arms were 33.625 inch arms, and he's like a guard. Like I know he played tackle, but it wasn't an arm length issue for Jamari Sawyer. Not that there's an issue, but just more that the movement skills and other things like that.
Right. So Cody Mock to me is somebody that really kind of stands out. If the Chargers needed like a true right tackle starter and they couldn't get one in the first round, like Cody Mock, I think would be somebody that I think could stand out for them. He's got a lot of versatility. He reportedly practiced every single day at North Dakota State as a center. So some people think that center is his best position potentially down the road.
Interesting.
And I didn't get to watch any of like the Senior Bowl practices, but everybody that was there kind of said that he was, noticeably more comfortable at tackle. And there wasn't a whole lot of difference for him between left tackle and right tackle, but just like the comfort level at guard, I think is going to take some work there. So, obviously some people have brought up like Dylan Radins hasn't necessarily worked out in the NFL. I think I would argue that's more about the situation and how they were like not super committed to like, you're a guard, you're a tackle, like we're going to give you some time. Like he was starting at left guard for them like in his third game as a rookie. So I think Cody Mock is a better prospect. I liked Dylan Radins a good amount. I think Mock has, more power and versatility to his game. I think Radins was more of a project than Mock was or is, I guess. So I like Mock a good amount. I think he's probably out of the Chargers range. And then this is probably my biggest disagreement here with the general consensus. I have DeJuan Jones at number 6. So
okay,
I have him as at a 6.4. So he does have a third round grade for me. This is like stylistically, like I just don't believe that a tackle of this size really like works in the NFL. Like outside of like Orlando Brown, who was like a historically bad athlete at the position, there just aren't a ton of like positive examples of guys this size like lasting in the NFL. So I think also with him, I don't think he really knows how to play to his size profile. Like you watched Mekhi Becton at Louisville, and he's not the same kind of size, but Christian Darrisaw at Virginia Tech, like those guys know how to play big. I think DeJuan Jones is still discovering how to do that, and there's just some technique things that I think really need to be cleaned up. I felt like he was generally always slow off the football, and I felt like he was really lungy as a blocker. So again, in a better class, he's probably lower than this, but it's just not my style. Like I think like a lot of that does come down to the draft and how we grade people. Is like what kind of players are you used to in your career? Like who do you watch and prioritize? Like, I mean, Rashawn Slater, like, yeah, he's an elite player, but like that's my kind of guy. Like I like the smooth movers, explosive athletes more so than like somebody who's a ginormous human being and just like really big and physical. And also DeJuan Jones is just not that kind of physical to me.
Yeah, I would definitely agree there. I don't have him, I don't say that low because not like 6 is low, but I think people have him as like second sometimes or third.
Yeah, people want him in the first round. I'm very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, I am thankful the Chargers don't need to have that question answered this year, but
Same.
like you, I have him as a borderline end of second round grade. So he's a tiny bit higher, but I do understand. Like, I don't buy there's a drop off for me. I think the top 3, not that they're in a kind of a certain range. And then I think there's a bit of a drop from there.
Sure.
All right. Number 7 for me is from the Brigham Young University, Blake Freeland from BYU.
Did not watch him.
Yeah, I figured. And then number 6, I have Matthew Bergeron.
Yep.
From Syracuse. I think Bergeron probably should have been higher, but I couldn't really sort through a certain cluster to get him high enough to pass up some of these guys. And then I did kind of appreciate Miles Murphy more after watching Bergeron. So it happens. I'll talk about the BYU guy. I think that means I have 15 seconds. So
you can talk about him. Like if you like Puka Nacua, like you can talk about him too, but I will not watch BYU tape.
Okay. Prototype at the position, 98th percentile tester, 99.2 pass blocking efficiency. Very, very, very zone specific guy. Played both right and left tackle, started 2 years at right tackle, then did 2 years at left tackle. Think of zone guys. Best mean you can use athleticism. Best mean you can reach a spot, beat out athlete you to a certain spot. He's got the height to do it. He's got the length to do it. He's got the athleticism to do it, to get to any spot. I don't know how to describe it, but he's like better in the bigger movements and the macro movements of playing tackle. So if he can like get a full head of steam and run somewhere, if he's pulling or whatever,
Sure.
like that seems to be better for him. But some of those smaller things, the minor movements, working in that phone booth and with power, I think is a bit of a problem for him there. He's kind of one of the stereotype tall tackles where it's like, oh, he can't squat and and bend and that sort of thing. Like, he's a taller guy and he's got long arms and he didn't really need to develop as much. You would have liked to see more at that point, but if you get him in the right system, I think he's going to be solid. You just have to get him in that right system. We'll see. I think Bootleg was talking pretty highly of him, not as like a top 3 guy by any means, but as a potential like second, third rounder, probably a second rounder sort of type. I think some team could look at his athletic traits, the overall build, and say, that's the tackle I want. I'll go get him. So I could see him going in the second round, but I have a third round grade on him.
Yeah, Brandon Thorne was pretty concerned about his ability to anchor. Is that something you noticed or no?
I'm sorry, I was reading the love your content comment from Travis Holland. So one more time.
It's all good. Thank you, Travis, by the way. So Brandon Thorne is pretty concerned about his ability to anchor and just like giving up his chest. Is that something that stood out to you too?
I didn't see as much giving up the chest on that one. I would say he ducks his head. I would say that the length is great when he can use it, but if he's lunging and ducking his head, that's a problem. So I suppose you give up leverage that way. And because he's so tall, and he's unable to sink, sit, squat, and bend that sort of way. So he kind of has to win with the length and the pop. Can he fix that? I'm sure he can fix that. I think he has more power going forward than he does anchors sitting back. So if someone's trying to power rush him, I think there's more of an issue. I think if he's trying to be more powerful and beat guys again to a spot and then try to knock them out of the way or use the strength going forward, I think he's better.
All right. There we go. And to Solo Man's point in the chat, Blake Freeland is a very rare case at BYU. He did not serve a mission. So like when Braden Christensen came out, he was like 25. So that's not the case with Blake Freeland. I think he just turned 22. So he, the age is not super concerning there. Thomas Martinez pointing out he had a rough Senior Bowl apparently. So
I missed that. The important question is, does he know what soaking is?
Somebody pointed that earlier. I wasn't sure if you were going to get to it or not.
No. Oh, I missed it. Darn it all. Thank you. Yes,
shout out Fitness. He's the one who made the comment. Yeah, I don't know, but no comment there. So I will not be watching him. It is what it is. All right. So number 5 for me is the guy you have at number 6, Matthew Bergeron. I really wanted to make him higher than the guy who I have number 4, who is Anton Harrison from Oklahoma. I think Anton Harrison just turned 21. So there's a bit of a project nature to him, to his game. Yeah. He does have some kind of technique issues that really need to get cleaned up. And, this Oklahoma offense is, I think from a run game has a lot to like, but in terms of, pass protection, it was so RPO heavy this past year. It was really hard to see Anton Harrison like really develop his technique as a pass protector. But he's just so explosive. Like, I think to me, he's got the best get off out of anybody in this class. And I think that's something that you can really hang your hat on for him. So I think there's going to be a bit of a learning curve for him. But I gave him a really high second round grade. So Anton Harrison's at a 6.85 for me. So, that merits probably going in the top 25 in this class. So, there's a lot to like. I think his ability to pull and get out in space and be able to get to the second level really stands out as well in the run game. If you want to watch just his good tape, he had a fantastic game against Felix Enrique-Uzama. And that was a performance that really kind of sealed the deal for me to have him over Bergeron, because I really like Bergeron. I don't think Bergeron has the same kind of athletic upside, but I think he's a little bit more refined and has a little bit more versatility too. But Anton Harrison, I think, 5 years from now, if Anton Harrison were the best offensive tackle from this class, I would not be surprised, because he's so young, he's so unrefined. But the explosiveness and the range just really pops when you watch him on tape to me.
Yeah, he's He was frustrating for me. I have him at the same spot as I think I do. Let me see. Yeah, I have the same spot. I have him in the same spot as you do. Second round grade. I only just I wanted to just see that last little bit of. I think you talk about the explosiveness, the first step, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That's there. That's evident. Of course, like Oklahoma, they're pulling a lot. They're asking him to do a lot in terms of athletic potential. Like he's definitely got at any point of the field. I just felt like the last 10% of finishing the play wasn't quite there for him.
Yeah.
But overall, like a really, really solid athlete, strikes well, good tackle. So I also have him at 4. Oh, who's your 3? Sorry, I cut you off.
That's okay. I wasn't sure how I wanted to break that up. But number 3 is probably no surprise at this point. It's Broderick Jones from Georgia. So again, somebody that I think probably is being a little bit overhyped for me. So I do have a high second round grade on him, and some people have him as OT1. That's just not something I can get behind. I think for him, it's like all run blocking at this point. I was not a huge fan of the way that he pass protected. It's a lot of who was it? Liam Eichenberg had a lot of the same issues as him, and just in terms of like bad hand placement, really being more of an absorber. I wasn't crazy about his ability to anchor, but I think like athleticism, physicality, he really only started for 1 year. So like Anton Harrison, there's a lot of just like rookie mistakes. But I think there's a ton of upside here as well. So the difference here between him and Harrison, I think, is just like ability to run block and be a people mover. Like it really is that simple. I think Jones is more powerful at the point of attack as opposed to Harrison, who's like a little bit more finesse.
Yeah, I have him at 3 as well. I think he had some really good reps against Ojulari. There was a point where I think Ojulari was having
Ojulari kicked his ass, man.
Yeah, there was a point, like I'd say like a third of the way in the game where he was holding Ojulari no problem. Like, okay, not holding, sorry, wrong word, but like keeping him at bay, no problem. And then suddenly Ojulari just decided that I'm just going to beat you with bend and rip and all that sort of stuff. And then it was like 4 plays in a row where Broderick Jones had no answer. Why am I talking about this player and putting him at 3? It feels so funny to like say this and then have him at 3. But again, it's upside. And you said he played 1 year at Georgia, only 195 snaps to his name before that. So I think he'll be fine. Right system, right coach. I think he'll be just fine. But yeah, Ojulari losing at first, then suddenly Ojulari just clicked. And that really like made me go back and think highly of Ojulari as well, because it had been a while since I'd seen him. And it just feels like he keeps falling down boards. But every time I watch him, because he faced so many of these tackles, it's like, this guy's pretty good. I'm not really sure I'm talking about him more. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think the thing with Broderick Jones is it's just all hand timing. It's all his ability to, strike consistently. And it makes sense. Like he started for 1 year at Georgia. Like he to me, like if he had returned to school, I think you're probably talking about like a bona fide top 10 pick. And he might go pretty close, like the Jets apparently really like him at 13. So that's maybe that doesn't change his stock at all, but I think for me, like we would have been much higher graded if he had returned, because I think it's just all technique stuff. So
yeah,
the good news is that it's all clean. It's all stuff that he can clean up. I don't think you can teach the kind of mentality that he plays with and the diversity he can give you as a run blocker, but as a pass protector, it just leaves a little bit left to be desired if you're being nitpicky. I will say he only had 1 holding penalty this year, and it was against TCU in the final game of the season. So pretty mistake free in that regard, which I think is a good sign. It gives you kind of some hope that he can clean up his mistakes going forward.
Yeah, this isn't Trevor Penning's 22 plus last year.
Thank God we didn't land in that boat, man. Oh my goodness. Finn is asking about Matthew Bergeron. He is Canadian, so I think there is a lot to like. If the Chargers needed a true right tackle starter, Bergeron, I think in the second round would make a lot of sense for them. He, unlike a bunch of other players in this class, has started multiple games and seasons at different positions. He's played left tackle and right tackle. So Bergeron's a quality player. I think he could also play some guard for you as well. So I think he's a pure tackle, but I think he could play guard in a pinch. So I'm pretty sure we have the same top 2, but we'll see how Tyler is feeling here. But Darnell Wright for me is number 2. And then Paris Johnson Jr. is number 1 for me from the Ohio State. So 2 Buckeyes, 2 Sooners in my top 10, which is just unfair to me as somebody who could never dream of having their school having a top 2 or 3 offensive tackle in the draft. Although Garrett Bowles was a top drafted pick, I guess. But so I'll let you talk about Darnell Wright. I'll talk about Paris Johnson Jr., who, Alex Katzen pointed this out. He's fluent in Chinese. He has majored.
Easy number 1. Forget it. What am I even considering?
Yeah. He graduated in 3 years from Ohio State and their journalism program. He's being mentored by Mike Garafolo from NFL Network. So very bright, intelligent human being. And like some of these other players in this class, he's only started 1 year at left tackle. He started 2021 season at right guard, despite being 6'6" and having 36-inch arms. So you want to talk about range and length. Like, I think that's what really sets apart Paris Johnson in this class. Like, he's just able to get to places that other people cannot. Like, as simple as that sounds, like his natural traits just like really pop when you watch him. So I do have some concerns about his anchor ability, and Brandon Thorne pointed this out too. Like, if you watch him against
Van Ness,
and well as in the Georgia game, I think there were some instances where their rushers were able to kind of get under him. But I think, to me, that's just like all technique things. I think you can clean that up. You can't teach what he has, and just like the explosiveness, the length really stands out. The recovery ability, to me, was something that really caught my eye too, and really kind of sealed the deal in terms of him versus Darnell Wright. So some things to clean up, but again, like, you're talking about rare length at the position, 36-inch arms. I think it might have been Brett Coleman saying that it just like kind of reminds him, like, body type wise, of Tyron Smith, which is like a hell of a comp. Like, I don't know if that means saying like play style and grade.
Yeah.
But I mean, just, you're talking about 36-inch arms, man. Like, there's like 2 or 3 guys in the league who have that kind of length. So you get him into a great system, I think he could easily be a perennial Pro Bowler in the league right now.
All right. Well, tackle speaking fluent in Chinese is definitely not something I expected to do today. That's a great fun
breaking
fact,
barriers right there.
That's outstanding. Someone says in the chat, the defense won't know what he's saying. I would love for those calls back and forth. That's amazing. But Paris Johnson Jr. is I don't say he's the only player in this class. He's the most tackle that plays chess, I feel like, in this class in particular. Like, guys that could beat him with power, let's say like Lucas Van Ness, and there were moments for that where they got their hands on him first. Like, you can beat him in that regard. But Paris Johnson Jr., I think, has the best reset and fix, and like the ability to adjust to like be the third move, not just like defense does something, I do something, and then we'll see what the result is. His ability to reset and do something different, and to just like calm the edge rusher down or whoever it is down, and just end the play there. Like, that stands out so much to me. So it does pain me in some ways because I do love Darnell Wright, although Darnell Wright I don't think is fluent in Chinese. So, maybe I don't love him as much. But man, like, as soon as I turn it on the film and he's got these long white sleeves, I'm like, that's going to be the guy that I like. I don't know why. I nearly put him at offensive tackle 1. I really, really thought about it up until really yesterday. I just like, could I go with my heart and put Darnell Wright there? I don't know. But, from the first snap, I thought I was going to get some, thick, stout, power anchor type. But then he's pulling, and then he's combo blocking, and then he's getting to the second level. And he's setting really well. And he's 333 pounds and almost broad jump 10 feet, which is like 90 something percentile. But he's doing it at 333 pounds. Steve Avila, who's a pound lighter, I believe, jumped like 1.25 feet shorter than him in the broad jump. Like, he's just a different level athlete. I think he strikes well. I think he moves well. He's one of the guys that actually finishes. And I'm not saying he's like angry, aggressive by any means, but I didn't feel like this was the meanest class of offensive tackles. And Darnell Wright really does stand out with his controlled aggressiveness there. So I love him. I don't have a ton of complaints with him, to be completely honest. I would put him at offensive tackle 1 if it weren't for Paris Johnson Jr., who I do think is both more advanced and he did play left tackle.
Yeah, I think that's, that is certainly something to consider. Although, we're in a spot where left tackle, right tackle doesn't necessarily matter a ton. But the first game that I watched of Darnell Wright was against Florida, and you would have thought it was like a high school, senior against like a freshman JV player. Like the man was just out there snatching dudes left and right,
Yeah,
just
man.
bully ball all day long. To me, like he has rare traits in the run game too.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were a couple of times where a lot of times when you're the front side tackle who's asked to do a down block with your guard, a lot of the times the scheme will require you to like come off and get the linebacker as well.
Mm-hmm.
And not a lot of tackles have that kind of range. And there was a play against Florida where they down blocked, and it was like they took the defensive tackle. I think it was Gervon Dexter actually, like 4 yards the other way. And then he was able to peel off like in an instant, get the linebacker, and Tennessee's running back was able to go and get a 20-yard gain. And it was just like a rare kind of play against Florida. And that was all over his tape. So,
yeah.
Again, there's some things that you could nitpick. I think Darnell Wright, his aggressive nature can, lead to some losses that are avoidable to me because he's so just like, I'm going to try and kill you today. Not in the same sense as Trevor Penny, where like literally he's trying to kill you.
And your quarterback.
And you're going to get a penalty and you're going to lose. So it's a good aggressiveness, but I think it can get to a little excessive at times, and just in terms of like losing a rep. So if you're being nitpicky, like that's one thing. And then the recovery ability is a tad concerning as well. But and just in terms of like size, athleticism, range, like he has rare traits, and you really see that in the run game in particular.
Yeah, no, he's awesome. He won my heart. I'm not trying to find like my guys in this group, but he stole my heart early on, and I was really tempted to put him offensive tackle one. I had a ton of fun watching him. I think Johnson's better. I had more fun watching Wright.
Yeah, one of the more fun players in this class for sure. All right. Final position rankings, Tyler, out of the way. How are we feeling?
I feel a lot, but I don't know if it just is like the second and third rounds are better this year or for whatever reason. I other than linebacker, like it was actually fun watching, and I don't feel as tired as I did this time last year. I don't know if it's because we had watched more players. I think I did end up watching more. I feel like I've watched less and less over the last couple of years, but I feel good, and I'm happy to, we're talking about our big board, and at some point, like I don't know where my board stands. I think it's like 125 players or something. It's not like a ton, but I got some stuff done, and I had some other things that I was doing, like getting, married and a master's and all that sort of thing. So just, it's nice to look back and really, we'll talk about this on Saturday when we talk about the big board, but I think it is really cool that even if I'm 100% wrong with everything that's on here, and there's really no reason that I should be right, but at least we did our homework. At least, you look on Twitter and see the film clip outs, look at the big board, look at the way we talk about it, look at the numbers, look at the composite rankings, the prototypes. Like we've gone through as much as we possibly can. And Telesco still won't drop the receiver and make it all not worth it for us. But, we are going to know these receiver groups front and back until they end up drafting one in the first round.
Yeah. No, from like a top 4 rounds, I feel pretty good about like, okay, I feel like I probably have watched these guys. Like I think that, there's enough there. This is a really fun day 2 group. Like to me,
it is.
I had outside of like Darnell Wright and Dalton Kincaid, like I think I had way more fun watching the day 2 guys than I did the day 1 guys. Like Zay Flowers is really fun, but like I had way more fun watching Marvin Mims and Jonathan Mingo, for example.
Yeah.
So it's just, this is a really great draft to have multiple top 100 picks. So hopefully we can continue to speak that into existence, and hopefully the Chargers can get some more of those. So last position breakdown, like we said, if you missed any of the other ones, you want to go check them out. They are all available on YouTube. So make sure and go watch those if you're kind of cramming before the draft. So it's been a ton of fun doing things with Tyler. And like he said, Uh, I'd never feel comfortable putting a grade on a player if I have not watched at least 3 games of all
Yep.
22 tape.
Hmm.
Obviously, that's not always the case. Sometimes you do have to YouTube some things. But the all 22 is really gives you a more complete picture, and then obviously the composite rankings and statistics and things like that as well. So doing our homework for sure. I mean, we're two educators. It wouldn't be any other way, but doing our homework. So Tyler, any final thoughts before we head out for the evening?
I am very excited for next week for so many reasons, and I can't wait for next week to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a great week for the podcast. Great week for the Chargers. Like Tyler hinted at, on Saturday, we'll be doing our official big board. We haven't decided if we're going to do just 50, 60, 75. We'll see how much time we have. But we'll at least do 50, and you guys can get some insight into some of the prospects that we really like. We're going to talk about some players that have kind of moved up and down the board that we've kind of shifted on. Tyler hinted at like Lucas Van Ness earlier. So going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be happening on Saturday. So make sure and stay tuned for that one. Tyler, appreciate it as well. Appreciate your time. Appreciate everybody in the chat today. And we'll see you on Saturday.